Now we move on to the next panel, and this panel is on the inherent power of storytelling, driving policy and perception on disability, media and narratives as catalysts for inclusion and policy change. Now, again, this seems to be very aligned to my area of professional expertise and interest as a former journalist and communication strategist. Um, we all know media is one of the most powerful drivers of perception and policy. And I remember a time when the headline was so stark when we spoke about disability or somebody who had achieved something. The headline invariably was against all odds. That was the headline which was used across newspapers. And as a person with disability, I used to feel so disgusted, but even I ended up using it because we didn't have better words. But today, the world has changed so much. Social media has changed our perception. It has made each one of us communicators in our own space. Now, I'm also considered to be an influencer because I'm doing a lot of advocacy on social media, specifically since I shifted to my attention to LinkedIn as a professional space from Instagram, where I was putting up my sari pictures and writing a paragraph about disability. So, yes, communication is something which is so important. And communication from a person who is affected is even more important. Because you can write my story, but you can't actually write about my emotion. You can't feel what I've felt. So, when people with disabilities present their stories on social media, it is from their lived experience. And it makes a lot of difference. I can see the kind of interest that it generates. And I'll give you just a small example, one example. I wrote about something called I have been paying a disability tax all my life. And that post on LinkedIn went viral. It went global with so many people writing to me that you have come up, you have just hit the nail on the head because people with disabilities are paying a tax for just living in this world. We pay everything more. We pay just to exist. So I'll bring the panel now because I don't want to hog the stage. Inviting first of all Shrishti Gupta from IDEA. Shrishti will be leading this conversation as editorial associate at India Development Review. She works across English and Hindi content, curating perspectives from the ground up. She has a background in political science and prior experience at Springer Nature, and she brings a very keen editorial eye to issues of social justice and development. Shrishti, welcome. Please give her a hand. We also have Srinivas Raghavan. He is a senior business journalist and columnist who has been reporting, analyzing, and interpreting the India growth story since the inception of economic reforms in India. I think that was in 1991, 1990. He has been responsible for breaking major stories like the Harshad Mehta stock scam, the return of Coke to India, the collapse of UTI, among many others. He retired as the editor of the Hindu Business Line. Please welcome him. Next, we have Deepti Prasad, the force behind NovaFlex, the world's first OTT platform for persons with disabilities. Her work blends entertainment, accessibility, and technology to innovations like Access Cinema. And she has been instrumental in building inclusive media access for blind and visually impaired users, while also leading on ground engagement with NGOs and blind schools. So, together, this panel will explore how media from journalism to OTT to cinema, and I'm going to add social media, can shift the way society sees disability and how these narratives can become catalysts for policy reform and cultural change. So, over to you.
Thank you so much. Welcome everyone to this panel on this conversation on how media is a catalyst, can become a catalyst through storytelling on disability narratives. I think a lot of the conversation today and yesterday has been about how a lot of issues, employment, healthcare, um, everything that finds space, a lot of it is led by storytelling. How do we find space in mainstream What topics do people care about? A lot of it is driven by storytelling. I'm not going to take a lot of space here because we have two very good panelists with us. Um, uh, uh, Sir, do you want to start us off? Yeah. Wherever you're comfortable. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody. When I was given certain instructions for how to approach this, one of them was that if you have a presentation, keep it short, 5 slides, no more. It brought back very bad memories because when I was the editor of a newspaper, it was my unwelcome task to report to the board of directors of the company every quarter. And I used to be told, listen, they're very busy people and they have lots of things to worry about. Keep it short, not more than 5 slides. And try and be positive, which was very difficult because we were losing money, losing circulation. And yes, so that was a challenge that fortunately has sort of helped me out here today because hopefully I will keep it in 5 slides, keep it short. So, have the first slide, please. So, I just want to, what is the power of storytelling? I mean, why is it important? It's important because stories shape public perception, and public perception in turns shapes and drives policies. Policies are not, by and large, decided upon in vacuum. Usually there has to be a push and a pull in order to get government or whatever administrative structure there is to come up with a policy. And that push factor comes when there is public pressure, when there is enough weight of opinion um, on something where people say that no, this needs to change, then some sort of policy development happens. So this is actually where it starts, right? This is where policy priorities are set. They are driven by public perception, and public perception is largely shaped by the media. Of course, it includes social media in a very large way nowadays. For dinosaurs like me, at least in the earlier part of my career, we used to pride ourselves that we are the ones who are shaping public perception. That's no longer true. Everybody does in their way. But nevertheless, it is important. So it's very, very critical. And you need to understand why this is important because also, and I'll tell you, this also shows how little the media has actually worked on this space, particularly on disability, because the scale of the problem in this country is very, very huge. The last census we had was in 2011. It had an estimate of about 26 million people with disabilities in the country. It's a huge, huge underestimation by a factor of many times, right? That's the lived experience of everybody here in this hall who's working in this space. You know how large the problem is, but it's not reflected, and I think that is something that which needs to this thing. So good storytelling, what it does is that it bridges the data gaps, right? So you haven't had a census for 15 years, you don't know, but media can help sort of highlight some of the scale of the issues. It sort of plugs the gaps where the numbers are missing, right? And not everybody sees all the issues, right? So what media also does, what good storytelling does, is that it humanizes certain issues which tend to remain invisible, except for the people who are affected and their immediate family and caregivers. So it humanizes that, it makes invisible issues visible so that somebody who needs to act on that is at least made aware of the challenge on hand. And it sort of changes the narratives. So, talking of policy, go to the next slide. So we have, of course, policies in place. India is a great country when it comes to, formulating laws and policies and legislation on everything under the sun. The so we have, rights of it's a rights-based policy, Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act. We have rules under that. We have the Accessible India campaign. So many other things, but how much has all of that actually changed the situation on the ground? There are huge gaps in enforcement. There are huge gaps in data, and there is a fundamental lack of awareness even today, right? It is not an issue which is top of mind. If you look at today's newspapers, they're all here. What are they full of? They're full of politics, they're full of crime, they're full of pollution, some sports, maybe nothing. I mean, there is very little. It doesn't change. The formula doesn't change. So I think here's where I think the media has to play a different role. So we have a policy, and that's it. So the people who make the policies, the politicians say, look, we've done this, we've passed the law, right? Our responsibility is over. No, it's not. And it becomes the media's job to then look at, are you implementing it? What is the progress? Keep regular this thing. Media suffers. I was reading an article the other day on artificial intelligence. One of the big problems with AI is that it has a very short memory. You ask a question, it gives you an answer, but if you ask the same question 10 minutes later, you get a completely different answer because it has forgotten what it researched and what it came up with earlier. That's the same with public memory, particularly for those who are responsible for delivery of governance. Memory is short, people forget. And media also has short-term memory. So what media tends to do is to go with whatever is sort of happening here and now, trending stories, and we tend not to go back and revisit issues to see what is the progress, what are the challenges, what are the achievements, good and bad. So that is another thing that which needs to say, because doing this does is that it sort of shows up the implementation challenges. No policy can get it right from the start. Nothing, the best of intentions, you don't get it right the first iteration. So you need to look at the implementation, you need to report on the progress, you need to look at what are the challenges which the implementation has faced in order to sort of tweak it and correct it and iterate it. So media's role in sort of not only creating policy, but also tweaking it, adjusting it to the needs as they change over time, that is also, I think that's very, very important. Media is, many things, not all of which are very nice or complimentary. Media is not held in very high regard in most societies for very good reasons for the kind of work they do or they don't do. And it has its own inherent problems. When it comes to coverage of disability, it has its own set of biases. So the first and foremost challenge as far as disability is concerned is that it's not really treated as a beat in most newsrooms. And I worked in 5 of India's largest newspapers, and none of them had a disability reporter, I'm ashamed to admit now. Nobody full-time. Nobody looks at it as challenge, even though we have a large number of people who are impacted, and there is an audience for it. So media also tends to look at, and I think a mention was made during the introduction part, you tend to use standardized tropes, lowest common denominator, play to the gallery. So, all these stories are looked at through 2 prisms, either as a helpless victim or some kind of heroic achiever against all odds. They use that phrase, who's overcome things. Both are wrong. You know, I think this thing. Most media houses do not do any sensitivity training of their reporters and editors when it comes to reporting, writing on disability. And where there are some style guides and rules, most organizations do not have them. The Hindu, where I worked, it had. It was one of the exceptions to the general rule. But even their implementation is patchy because this is not, again, something which is being monitored, so lapses are not being pulled up saying, look, don't do this, you're deviating from our rule. So those kind of things. The biggest problem, however, is the last one, that because media coverage tends to focus on the individual, on the sensational, on emotions, it tends to miss fundamental issues, structural issues, lack of infrastructure, the big gaps in policy, social attitudes. You don't really look at it. You don't really sort of hold a mirror to media is supposed to hold a mirror to society, but it doesn't when it comes to this. So that's a big challenge. What can we do? I think, and this is largely, I think, not addressed to this audience in this hall, but to media in general. I think what can media do is this thing. First and foremost is that we need to adopt disability style guides, and there are good ones available. BBC has an excellent one. Associated Press of America is one of the world's largest wire agencies. They have an excellent style. Reuters has. And I think these need to be adapted to the Indian condition. This is one assurance I'll give you from here. I'm a member of the Editors Guild of India, which is a sort of professional body of editors. And I wrote the Code of Ethics, the current Code of Ethics, which the Editors Guild of India circulates to all media houses, of what journalists should follow. It doesn't have this thing, but I will try and amend that and make sure that we develop certain basic advisories on that. So we need to establish a beat. And what does establishing a beat means is not only are you dedicating a resource, you're also training that resource, right? Journalists are not created ready-made, being knowledgeable and expert about subjects. So if I want to cover new energy, I have to invest time and effort in training a reporter to understand challenges and issues around new energy so that they can report on it in an informed and knowledgeable manner. So the same thing needs to be done with disability coverage. We also need to make content accessible. Most media houses don't bother. Television, I mean, there is no auto captioning. There is no, design is not looked at. Website designs are not optimized for readability. We don't have audio audience. Some of these problems are being fixed by big technology companies. In fact, yesterday my Chrome browser on my laptop updated, and they said the new thing we've added is that every web page on the which Google Chrome shows you is now auto readable, and you can hear an audio version of it. So some of those problems are being fixed by big technologies, but media houses themselves don't bother to do any of these things. I think that's something that they need to pay attention to. And I think another very, very important point, and that's where I think all the civil society organizations who are working in this field, you also need to work on this. It is to deepen interactions and collaborations with media. I think some of this lack of coverage, lack of awareness can be bridged if there is more interaction, opportunities to sort of hear about the challenges as well as the solutions which are being implemented, and that will automatically sort of change the situation. I think so. There is a lot of scope for collaboration between civil society and media. Government, because government is very good at pushing out what it wants to say. So every day you will get, some statement from the minister, some, press releases saying we've done this policy, we've done this rule, all that they get. But like I said, none of that is monitored and it's not counted, and that has to come through this thing. And I think you also need to work with businesses. Sort of use a carrot and stick policy, highlight good things that they're doing in certain areas, as well as point to the failures and gaps. I think these are certain basic things that you can do to take some action on that. And I think, finally, it's important for all these all these things to be, sort of brought together with, good storytelling, and for that we need to really, we need to sort of, bring in much more education, awareness, and sensitization. I think as far as the media is concerned, it has to start first by cleaning its own house and then start taking the broom to other organizations. So thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I think that's the most important point here, that media obviously has a very important role to play. And it's not just about what kind of stories that they're telling, but also how they are saying those stories. You also made one very important point about making multimedia accessible, which is where our second panelist comes in. Deepti, you want to take us through it?
So thank you so much, ma'am, for the lovely introduction. I think you pretty much summarized everything that I do. So let me begin with my visual description. I'm dressed as a thunder crowd today, wearing gray pants with a white suit and a white t-shirt underneath. My hair is waist long and open at the back, and I'm wearing my best smile like always. Like Sir said, that if media did their job complete, foundations like No Barrier Foundation wouldn't exist, because the reason why I exist, or why NobaFlix as a platform existing, because somebody left their job incomplete. Like we mentioned earlier, NobaFlix is the world's first and only 100% accessible OTT, currently hosting over 500 movies, all with audio description for verified visually impaired. It is a subscription-based model so that I can keep the platform sustainable. The library is suggested by the users themselves, and these movies are not something that I'm making. These are the same movies that you and I probably watch on Netflix or Prime Videos or other OTT platforms. But they were not made with audio description. Hence, we as a foundation had to do the job which was left incomplete by the initial production houses or the content owners. Before NobaFlix, I co-founded Excel Cinema. Like ma'am earlier said, persons with disabilities have been paying extra money for everything that they wanted. Similarly, for watching movies, which I learned in my journey, a visually impaired person ended up paying 3 times more than a movie experience in the theater compared to a sighted person, because they would take a friend or family or a colleague to watch the movie and do the narration for them. Ultimately, this friend wants to eat popcorn and drink Pepsi also. Going back is a cost again. Sending them back through Olas and Uber, the cost has to be bared by the visually impaired. So it's not one ticket that they are purchasing. They're actually purchasing 2 tickets with multiple other costs. But platforms like Excel Cinema, which is a mobile application free to install for anyone, users with visual impairment or hearing impairment walk inside any theater of their choice, any showtime, any movie location, and they simply need to plug in their earphones and listen to the audio description or enjoy the sign language or closed captions in sync with the live film. Currently, we have over 35,000 movies that we are working on. Of course, the government has recently issued these guidelines, which did work, are important because the mindset of the production houses is now changing towards accessibility. This was only me since 2018 trying to explain to them that persons with disability are not just for charity. This is a new market segment that is opened up if you just make your movie accessible. They will come into the theaters, they don't come alone, they obviously come with a group of friends, family, colleagues. So this is extra footfall that you'll be generating for your movie goers. And once the guidelines are launched, which is not fully implemented, but again the problem lies here that the guidelines are also launched with couple of loopholes. Mainly, audio description is not defined by the government. So if there's an action scene, somebody can just narrate that there's an action scene. Instead, what they're supposed to say is, now was a kick and this was what was the action. Every visual needs to be described. This is missing. Secondly, where the government has missed out is a standardized platform, because nobody is promoting the accessibility feature. Even though their movies are made accessible, they're not talking about it. And the community members don't really know which app to install or how do we consume the accessibility feature. Hence, it's just become a tick mark in the checkbox of whether the movie is accessible. So, which I feel is, again, lacking from the government point of view. Like Sir said, media needs to be accessible. All of us are content creators. Each one of us sitting in this room have social media accounts. We are posting content on daily basis. Let's take that little effort of writing the alt text for an image that you post. Let's turn on that CC button on a video that you post, and it will automatically bring in more attraction to your page. In terms of supporting the No Barrier Foundation, like I mentioned, it is a subscription based platform, but users can also request for sponsorship. These are the users who are either learning a skill or students or come from an economically challenged background. So anyone can pay 349 for them, and 1 year of subscription will be granted to them. You can support us in creating the content, because the content that we are creating with the accessibility feature also comes with a heavy cost. And we have campaigns like Sugam Cinema Yatra, under which we travel to blind schools, NGOs in the rural part of the country, where we showcase one movie with audio description that not only promotes or gives that knowledge about audio description, but also promotes digital literacy. So I hope at least some of you will be able to join the revolution after this day. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Deepti, for that lovely presentation. I hope everyone understands what audio description is, and if not, I'm sure you can check it out on NovaFlix. I think what both of you brought up, we have time for a couple questions, right? Okay, great. I think the biggest gap that both of you kind of brought up is willingness a little bit, whether it's in newsrooms or whether it's with film and media, because it's one of the things that why is disability not a beat in the way that why we are not talking about the issues that matter to them. Why is it just left up to, like, inspirational tropes? And why is media, film production houses, why is audio description or other accessibility tools not already integrated into our films and media? So my question is that because you both have been experienced in your field, why do you think this gap exists, and how can we help drive it better? Like, what role can media play in driving that narrative forward, that this gap needs to be filled?
I think what the key thing to establish here for media owners and managers, because media is a business. I mean, let's be very clear on it. Journalists may practice it as a passion or a vocation, but it's owned by businessmen. It's run as a business. And what we need to establish first and foremost is the business case for inclusion in this. You need to demonstrate that there is an audience, there is a demand, and that serving these two will help you, not just help society. Yes, if that is a benefit. The suits, at least, I mean, maybe the editors will feel differently, but getting that space becomes challenging. I'll just share, how this, when I was editing a newspaper, I was part of a global program. So 25, 30 media houses from all the continents, Africa, Europe, Asia, and the Americas. We got together to share stories on solutions on climate change, which innovative solutions which are being done at the grassroots and so on. And we would share these stories, translate. They were in multiple languages, translate them with the help of an NGO, and then carry a feature. And it had huge response, because people realized that a solution which works in Chile will work just as well in India. The situations are not very different. Uh, uh, but to get that space, I had to actually say, all right, I will reduce my page count by 2 pages for 2 weeks in order to get my 14 pages which I wanted to show for the special issue. So you need to make the business case, you need to demonstrate a little bit, and that's something which is where I think the civil society organizations, by putting pressure on the corporates who support the media, they can also make a difference. I think that's something they can do, and also to work with the government to change certain rules. So look at making, for instance, accessibility mandatory for television news channels or something like that. So you can do it a little bit through policy and administration, but largely by making a business case.
And speaking of making a business case, I'm sure, Deepti, that you have to do that all the time when you go to production houses, because you have to show that the numbers are there. Like, the people are going to come to the theaters, they're going to be using these technologies. And I know that you have also had a couple of production houses on board for this, right? So, how do you go about that?
So back in 2018, when we started, of course, the mindset was a problem. The production house had never really thought of accessibility the way I was presenting accessibility to them, as an extra footfall, new customers. So before giving the content, they would ask, how many users do you have on the app? And when it comes to the user, they're like, how many movies do you have? Why should I download your app? So it was a chicken and egg story. That went on till pandemic COVID. And I also had that urge of, what about the old content which are already out of the theaters? What about the content which is on the existing OTT platform? They are also not accessible. Then the awareness of what is audio description among the blind community was also lacking. So hence the entire ecosystem of launching NovaFlix, which will create awareness among the users, which will give them more content, and ultimately these are the same users who are going to come to theaters and enjoy movies that are released on Excel Cinema. So the ecosystem had to be designed. So I think, yes, like you said, I'm the live example of the entire ecosystem setup, and showing the production house the business that can come in because of these users who are not catered to. And about technology also, today that technology is available at such a fast pace. India actually pioneers in a lot of manner, because in the West world they have assistive listening devices in theaters. They're still not device free or hardware free, but India has come to that notion where we are hardware free, scalable solutions, and future ready, which does not need a lot of tweaking time and again. So India, pretty much in terms of at least media accessibility, we are ahead of the rest of the world.
Great to know. I'm going to open it up for a couple questions from the audience also. Okay, we have a hand up. Um,
Hi, Gautam here. just wanted to figure out how many international titles do you have on that? And what does it take to convert a normal movie into a audio description enabled one?
So it's a software, hence patents are not required. And we do cater to international studios also. We are Disney certified, which is the only platform in India. We are TPN Gold certified, which is again the only one in India. I'm working currently with the Yashraj and the Dharmas and the Geo Cinemas as long-term contracts with them.
Okay.
So if there is any international content, whether it's a corporate movie or a commercial film, we can make it accessible and then host it. So accessibility comes in two parts. One is creation of audio description, and the other one is delivering the created audio description to the end user. So I do both the jobs for the production house. So one-stop content accessibility solution.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thank you. The panel was wonderful. There was a lot of learning. Deepti, thank you. You're doing some amazing work. And we recently got to host a film festival and realized how important it was to have make it very accessible despite having a sign language interpreter. Many people with hearing impairment couldn't understand, needed closed captioning. So the film festival was a great learning. Srinivas, thank you so much for especially mentioning like AI. Media has a very short memory. So it's about training media people. I am Nikita Sarah and I work with the Leprosy Mission. We work with people affected by leprosy and people with disabilities. And leprosy is the leading cause of disabilities globally. It has so many negative perceptions, and we've been trying very, very hard to work with the media for a very long time to dispel perceptions. Now, the fact is that we've been doing a lot of training because media usually refers to people affected by leprosy as lepers, which is a word that you cannot use anymore. And also, because leprosy is so easily curable, we do not want media to show people with leprosy with deformities in a negative light. But most of the NGOs, civil society organizations working in the district do not have the bandwidth to sustain the training because there's so much of attrition also in the media houses. You train some today and they're gone tomorrow. How can we sustain this information? Even we've done training, guidebooks, guidelines, everything. But at the end of it, tomorrow in the newspaper, you'll hear a story, a leper found here, or some cases, and even visual. So, how can you make it more sustainable?
So I think, one place to start would be at the very beginning where journalists first study journalism. So working with journalism institutes, university departments, and building this in, if you could create a model paper, for instance, just one course, 1 credit or 2 credits or 4 credits, depending on how long you want to make it, design the course, teaching material, testing, so that it becomes part of the basic training. So then what will happen is that you don't have to depend on every single newsroom, because all of them hire now. Gone are the days. I mean, I never went to journalism school, but I became a journalist 40 years ago, where you could just talk your way into a job. It was a different country, different environment at that time. It's no longer so. Every job has specializations, and newsrooms tend to hire only people with journalism degrees, right? So why not start there? And I think if you could work with at least some of the influential and leading ones, like the Indian Institute of Mass Communication, and some of the big universities which have journalism courses, degrees, build a couple of this thing, so it becomes part of the core training. I think that's one place to start. The other is to do sort of a series of refresher workshops where if you can get newsrooms to nominate people. I do agree, and this is a problem which even I faced as an editor, that like I said, you cannot create a subject matter specialist overnight. So I invest time and resources. I hire a reporter, I send that reporter for training programs. I send them on exposure trips, learn about a subject, then they get poached by somebody else. So it's a problem that we face. So I think we need to sort of do this on a sustained basis, small localized workshops. There are organizations that you can work with. There are press clubs in many cities where you can have a short program where people can get some, at least, basic introduction to this. Like I said, if you can incorporate it into journalism curricula, that will make a huge difference, because then you're getting a whole lot of people who have at least had some basic organized exposure to the subject.
Hello, hi. So, my question to Deepthi, I do appreciate that so many advancements are, happening for people with disabilities. I'm going to ask very complex question. We don't need answer here, but we have to think about it. When we talk about intellectual disabilities, access to entertainment, access to media is very far away. So, I mean, having an audio description is a good medium for people with visual impairment, but having an easy mode of description maybe is the requirement for so many other kind of disabilities. So we have to think about it, and I would like to pose questions to all the innovators who are here to think about it. Yeah.
I just, your question reminded me of the incident that I recently happened to experience at the Goa Purple Fest. So we curated 3 movies for everyone to come and watch, and the movie got over. Sayara was the movie, which is viral among the youngsters these days. And a lot of youngsters came in to watch the movie. After the movie ended, I was standing right outside the theater gate just to understand everyone's experience and watch their facial expressions, because that's my personal motivation to do what I do. There was a mother, she came out crying. And then she took me in a corner and she said, my daughter, who is person with disability, is not, she was never interested in watching movies, but she loves music, because when she's alone in her room, I can hear the music from her phone and she's dancing alone. But because family, extended family, friends are not being supportive, so she's started to hide this about herself, that she enjoys music and she enjoys movie. And today we went to watch this movie, and as a family we all could enjoy the experience independently because she was listening to the audio description. And I still cannot get their faces out of my mind, because that's something that's really touched my soul, that it was not intentional for me to do what I do. Excel Cinema, launched in 2018, was extra language cinema. When movies are dubbed in multiple languages, this was my solution to offer to the end user that they can just plug in the earphones and listen to the alternative dub track. But when I realized the same solution or the technology that I have built can be used for visually impaired persons who want to enjoy audio description, so why not? And then came sign language also, because sign language interpretation is not available on big screens. So why not on the smartphone? So it led one thing to other, and of course what you have said could lead to something else also after this.
Amazing. Thank you so much for the lovely questions. I think what undercuts the last couple questions is also language is a very big thing. What kind of language we are using? Are we simplifying it enough? Are we being respectable enough? Having style guides for media rooms, having style guides for audio description, so to make it accessible for everyone. And what comes at the bottom of it is also intent. I know that we ourselves as a media organization, our organization is also very intent on having this as on our platform. So we also have style guides, we also follow it to the T. So we have quality product out for everyone out there. So yeah, I think that about wraps up our discussion. Thank you so much. And if everyone had other questions, please find us in the coffee break. Thank you.
Excellent discussion on importance of media understanding why people with disabilities are not not something which is outside the society but very much part of the society and should be considered as a readership base. For example, I've been devouring the newspaper since I was a very young kid because even when television came on, I could not understand anything. So for me, still today, newspaper is the first source of information as far as news is concerned. However, coming back to Deepti, I'd like to say that I've crossed my 50s, and it was only when OTT came on that I understood what entertainment actually was. And I became one of your biggest clients because I have subscription for almost all OTT platforms and I binge watch. And I'm just one out of at least 7 to 8% today. When we get the census, we'll know the actual percentage of people with disabilities who are dying for this kind of entertainment. So it's high time that we started considering us not just a charity case as you mentioned, but as a business imperative because we also have money and we want to spend. And people, even those who don't have money, would be very willing to spend a 500 rupee note on a ticket for a movie which stars Shah Rukh Khan. I'm also his fan. But I mean, they will go beyond their means for that entertainment. We are mad people. Bollywood is something which we all are dying for. Salman and Shah Rukh and you name it. We all have our favorites, right? I'm from journalism background myself and worked for 11 years in Hindustan Times. I would like to come to your point where you said that we need those guidebooks. We had those Bible books. If we have language etiquette books, also like a Bible guidebook, I think it will become mandatory for all new recruits and even the existing ones to follow the language etiquette. So nobody would be making that mistake of calling me a wheelchair bound person. I mean, I'm not bound. Any person who's using a wheelchair is actually flying because without the wheelchair, we are bound. We can't even move. With a wheelchair, we get wings. So that needs to be communicated to the media through the guidebooks that you spoke about, and you are in a very good place to actually take this forward. My personal request to you to do please work on this with the Editors Guild of India, the right place to, as we say that inclusion is a mandate which is set by the leadership. It's not bottom up, it's top down. And if the editors themselves know which language to use, what kind of words to use, and why we must not have just one story nearing, because of course we are near International Day of Persons with Disabilities on 3rd December. So we'll have so many stories about people with disabilities, right? Even the government is going to make some new announcements. And that's the time when media thinks that we should be doing some stories. However, there has been a change. I've observed that there are stories coming up about something or the other which keeps happening. And I think it's because of the community, because the community is pushing its mandate. It's working a lot. And it's actually a collaborative process. So thank you everyone for this excellent panel. And let's give them a big hand.